Go ahead.
Thank you everyone for joining this morning or this afternoon. My name is David and I'm from Spark Niagara, the Niagara Falls Ryerson Innovation Hub. We have these webinars every week in partnership with the Niagara Falls Small Business Enterprise Center and the Niagara Falls Chamber of Commerce. So I'm very excited today to introduce Brandy Henderson and Julio Bachascavidia from Bridge Solutions. So they're going to talk to us today about how to get your business back to work post-COVID and really making sure that your employees, team, and stakeholders feel comfortable getting back into the workforce. One just quick item as housekeeping, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat and then I'll ensure that our speakers answer them. And then at the end, there will be a question and answer period for about 10 minutes. So with that, please welcome Brandy and Julio.
Thank you so much, Dave. As you know, it's a pleasure being asked to come and support the community and share what we've been working on and how we've been reaching out to the community. So thank you for always providing this network to your members and to the community. Just a quick update in regards to Bridge Solutions, Inc. This, as a corporation, has come together rather recently as a result of a number of different projects that my company, with my partnership with Ro Prudente and Onera Group from publishing and brand marketing, working with Julio in the past with his tech company, has always been pushing out innovative solutions, technical software development, immersive experiences, etc. We've spent the last couple of years working on a number of projects together, and a lot of that software, a lot of that hardware equipment translated over to what the business community could really use and put into place today just to help strengthen overall operations and where times are right now. So we thought it was perfect timing to come together as one unit under one umbrella and combine our resources to bring to market some of these solutions.
Okay, so as we get going, so the topics that we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about the risk. We're going to try explain them and get a clear understanding of what they are. We're going to identify the appropriate controls. Then we're going to talk about a little bit about how to develop your safety plan. And also we're going to give you some tools at the end that you can implement in your business. So as we go and talk about understanding the risk related to how the virus spreads. Contrary to some discussion, COVID-19 is not like all the common cold at all. However, it does spread just as easily. 40% of the cases are spread by those not yet showing symptoms. Transmission occurs through direct person-to-person or surface contamination. The risks are greater when you spend more time with potentially infected people, or you work in proximity with others or interact with more people. And also the risks are great when you work in enclosed spaces, or if you have any pre-existing conditions that make you more susceptible.
And these are some of the reasons as to why a lot of people are seeing restaurant patios open. I know a number of business owners have asked, well, why am I allowed to operate on a patio versus my indoor space? Why do I have to create additional investment? And that's just because of the transmission rates from indoor to outdoor spaces is still tracking that it's much more safer to be outdoors in those types of environments. Sorry, Julio.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So actually, last Monday we had my Rotary Club had a specialist in this regard. His name is Dr. John Hickey. He's from Alberta. He's the president of what was it? He's he's a senator and a governor at the Calgary University of Calgary, and one of the things that he said is that more people are susceptible to get the spread through indoors. But he gave us, in order to remember this, he gave us 5 C's that we can remember. Crowded, so lots of people in big crowds. That's one of the areas where we can get the virus. Close, physical proximity to others. Or close, being indoors or poor ventilation. Continuous, spending time regularly with any of the C's. So if you spend time in a crowded room, in a close proximity or a close space, you're most susceptible to get the virus. And chanting, when he talks about this, breathing, speaking out loud, the more you speak, the louder you speak, the more saliva will come out of your mouth. And that has more potential of reaching, creating droplets that can transmit to other people. One of the facts that he said is like there's an actually 18 times higher transmission rate indoors versus outdoors. Like Brandy explained, this is one of the reasons why patios are allowed to open and not in the inside of a restaurant at this moment. One thing we got to remember, and this is something that a lot of people don't want to believe, they want to think that this is something that is going to, once we reach phase 3, it's going to be, that's it. COVID is done, it's cured. We no longer have to think about it. However, that is not the case. This is not a short-term thing. COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease, and it's an infectious disease caused by a pathogen that is transferred from an animal to a human. Did you know that every year there's like 5 new human diseases that appear, and 3 out of those 5 are of animal origin? It is so important to ensure that we're not dismissive of the long-term ramifications of COVID-19, whether through the current pandemic or a future virus trend. Even once a vaccination is available, we remain highly susceptible to ongoing virus threat to our population. So whatever plans we have for our business are going to be long-term plans. They're not just going to be something that within a month or 2 or even 6 months is going to be done. So unfortunately, this is the new normal, and we have been forever changed. So identifying the controls. In order to identify the controls, we have to apply the hierarchy of control. Your approach to how you implement the necessary protocols will define the strength of your future business. The first thing you gotta do is elimination. You gotta remove the risk altogether from a place of business that requires a completely remote solution. Many businesses have taken this route, but it's not possible for many industries. Engineering solutions. Making physical changes to your space, such as plexiglass barriers and temporary safety structures, which you've seen in a lot of stores, and a lot of businesses are doing that. Thermal fever screening hardware, some are doing that. That's something that we offer to also as a solution. Contactless point of sale system or order entry equipment. There's a lot of, in the past, a lot of businesses have gone into touch displays and all that because it made it easier to use. Now that particular hardware is becoming a hindrance to the business because it's one of the ways that can spread the virus. LED displays to replace standard paper messaging communication. And the other control that we can use is administrative, making appropriate changes to your policies and procedures, such as posting appropriate signage, restricting the number of patrons that come into your business, providing staggered shifts and break periods, offering regular training proactively to keep staff informed. Another thing is that we can use is personal protective equipment. Take the time to understand the different types of personal protective equipment and their purpose, while also remaining informed with the current regulations and recommendations provided by the public health.
And that's something that has to be taken into consideration. Everybody is aware of how frequently the communication is being updated and the recommendations from Ontario Public Health and the national public health entities. But understanding that there's different purposes for each type of PPE is really important, because knowing how to direct your staff how to use them or not use them, because misinterpreting some of those directions can actually create more contamination. For example, there's a lot of discussion about when to use gloves and when not to use gloves, especially in the restaurant industry. And we'll provide some industry-specific outlines and resources at the end of the call that kind of outline the variances between multiple industries. But it's something that, depending on what your business is, the type of business it is, you really have to understand and not assume that it's just sanitizer, gloves, mask, et cetera, is applicable to all. There's constant information being pushed to share what applies to each situation to reduce contamination.
So that carries us over to developing our safety plan. So where do you start? I mean, the first thing you got to do is you got to leverage trusted and reliable resources that have a vested interest in your success and safety. There's new information coming out all the time on the internet every single day. If you can get overwhelmed with all the information that you have. So just keep one specific place where you get the resources. It's a trusted place. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take you through 6 critical questions to ask yourself when developing your safety plan, as outlined by the province of Ontario. Each question will guide you through defining which protocols you must create for your a specific industry and what type of business. Remember, each process must consider a people-first approach. The protection and safety of all is critical importance to your business future. So number 1, how would you ensure all workers know how to keep themselves safe from exposure to COVID-19? The first thing you need to do is promote an informed workplace through timely and regular communication. We cannot emphasize that enough. Communication is key while we deal with all of this. Post signage for patrons and workers in key areas, and also publish and commit to an ongoing procedural training calendar. Number 2.
So
go ahead.
This is almost like going through, I'm sure everybody on the call is familiar with, defining your business plan in the early stages and then revisiting that plan. It's almost like going all the way back to the beginning and taking a look at your entire business and applying each of these questions to how your business is operating today and defining all of this new content, right? So you might think, yes, we have like a weekly team huddle already. We're going to continue to have that weekly team huddle and add to the agenda that we're going to talk about these topics. But now you have to consider where is that huddle taking place? Is it in a closed room? Is it in a boardroom? Do we have enough space? Should we be, in the back parking lot where it's open air? Is a weekly update enough? Have we staggered our shifts? Are we catching all of our overnight staff? Is everybody feeling comfortable coming to work? Is all that content that we're sharing in our updates timely, relevant, accurate, and designed to make your workers and your guests feel confident that you're doing the right thing? So it's a really detailed process that we all need to go through, applicable to our business. So, these are just a couple of highlights, right? But I hope at the end we get to have some discussion to some things that you guys are all implementing already or considering implementing. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay.
Again, Julio.
That's okay. No problem at all. Yeah, and so how will you screen for COVID-19? Post prominent do not enter signs if symptomatic or at risk. Conduct pre-screen surveys prior to appointments, work arrival, and so on. Conduct verbal on-site screening prior to entry, or deploy temperature screening solutions to reduce risk. So the number 3 step will be, how would you control the risk of transmission in your workplace? You should maximize physical distancing opportunities by adjusting your floor plan, leveraging outdoor spaces, and modifying entry points.
This has been very tricky for a lot of people, especially with a couple of our existing clients in Niagara. Some have had to put up, this recent open air office environment that has come to fruition, co-working spaces, shared desks, etc. A lot of businesses over the last 2 years have completely reformatted their floor plans to be more open and shareable space. And now people are reinvesting in putting up walls, creating private offices, installing certain measurements where people cannot enter more secure areas if they have a fever or they're exhibiting any symptoms or whatever. And a lot of that floor plan stuff is very time consuming. Doesn't always necessarily have to be a very large investment, but again, still things to consider, what makes sense for the future.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing that we can do is also deploy contactless communication devices where possible to reduce surface contamination, or install efficient screening solutions to mitigate costs such as group entry fever detection.
Julio, can you explain a little bit about the contactless communication? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so a lot of people when they come in, like I mentioned in the beginning, is a lot of companies have spent a lot of money into doing touch displays. Actually, at Spark, we got 2 brand new touch displays just before all of this happened, and we were going to make it interactive so you can contact people and use it as a communication device. Well, now all of that being something that is touch is something that we cannot technically, it's not feasible anymore because of the COVID. So what we've done, and we've actually come up with a solution where we put a program and we can make any touch screen display into being gesture based. So it will recognize your hand motions and use your hands almost as a mouse in order to point and click on the information that is on the display. So that explains that.
Thanks.
So what would you do if there's a potential case of or suspected exposure to COVID-19 at your workplace? The first thing you need to do is ensure that you have an easily accessible protocol outline that lists necessary steps as provided by public health. You can also follow all contact procedures for public health as well as all potentially impacted workers and guests.
And number 4 is something that actually will take the bulk of the time in creating, specific to your business, because this is the detailed part of your plan that triggers a number of different policies based on when something happens, how does our staff have to react? How do we have to handle this type of situation to A, make sure that any potential contamination is contained, B, that the notification of other potential impacts or potential transmission cases can be communicated to be notified. And all of those triggers are different based on the type of workplace you have. Whether you have customers that you now need to contact. I know that I went to a patio for the first time.
Oh, hello.
My phone number via server and my email address in my life, and now that's part of their part of the protocol, so that if there is something that happens, they can reach out and connect with the people that had been at their place on that time and at that date, et cetera, et cetera. So this part of developing that plan will go through the data that you need to collect, how that impacts both your employees, how it impacts your customers, and then all the different controls that you legally have to report out to, from public health phone calls to reporting to the labor board as applicable. And the province of Ontario does take you through a number of those examples in the documentation that we'll share with you. You'll see some of that. I just wanted to highlight how truly detailed this step in that safety plan needs to be.
And it's very important. And from our conversation with some of the businesses that have already opened up, that's one of the things that they've kind of neglected to do, because they spend so much money and so much time and resources on getting just open, following the rules that they were given. That's one of the things that if something were to happen, they don't know what to do next.
It can be very overwhelming if not planned out, especially for your staff that's expected to handle it in your absence, for example, right? And to know what to do properly.
Exactly. So how would you manage any new risks caused by changes to the way you operate your business? Well, for the first thing is you need to consider which elements are impacted by the procedural changes and how you can measure the success of your changes. You can also increase the frequency of both employee and customer feedback to gauge responsiveness and comfort levels, and be prepared to adjust based upon feedback. Like going back to one of the things that we said at the beginning, communication is key on how we handle this as we go, get into the future.
And it's okay to adjust those protocols if they're not working. Sometimes when we assess a situation like this that nobody has gone through before, and you have an idea or a process, you meet with your team, you roll that out, and it ends up being inefficient or difficult to maintain. Your team will give you that feedback, especially if they feel comfortable in doing so. Just be prepared to act quickly on that feedback, and don't feel like you can't adjust, because there's already a lot of things changing and we want to be consistent. Being consistent is one thing, but losing additional money on being stuck in a certain process that's not being efficient to your bottom line can be very, very dangerous long term. So be flexible. It's okay.
Exactly, because this is something new that we're going through all together, and we do have to be susceptible to feedback and take that and make the changes necessary. And like Brandy said, in order to be successful. So how would you make sure that the plan is working? Well, first of all, develop the health and safety committees to monitor and assess implementation and adherence. It's very important.
Which we should all have already.
Yeah, right.
Spark has a fabulous health and safety committee.
That's right. And then the other thing is to construct a frequent communication plan and make it accessible to all. And of course, conduct personal audits with your staff. So again, what we want to emphasize on this is that this is a permanent thing. The risk related to the transmission COVID-19 will be with us well into the future, as every other infectious disease before it. If you remember SARS, there was things that happened when SARS happened that are still, affected the way we do business. And the same thing happened when we had swine flu that happened a few years back. Diseases do not eradicate themselves, they live on, and we simply learn to live with them. So while there are many trials for a vaccination to eventually be released, this does not mean that COVID-19 will go away. We have a vaccine for many viruses, such as the measles, but it has not gone away. Several viruses still pose high risk, but we have come to terms with them, and we have learned how to mitigate the risk. As a community, we must treat this pandemic with the seriousness it deserves. When constructing our safety plans, our new protocols, our adjusted physical spaces, we must do so with longevity in mind.
And something that we are currently working on with all of our existing clients is, as we go through the different plans that they want to implement, assess the short term, like both the cost valuation, the investment, and the short-term benefits to it, both from an employee, let's say an employee retention perspective, building confidence in your workforce to make sure that your absenteeism or your overall attrition stays low, because people need to be comfortable coming to work, be a reliable workforce. Also look at the impacts to, your volume, your customer volume. You want people to feel confident using your services or coming into your space. But all of that is still very short-term in regards to how this is going to help the next little bit. Also take a look at the plans that you're rolling out and how can they support additional mechanisms that your business needs to rely upon 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 3 years from now, and make sure that whoever you're working with or whatever avenue you're looking to go to, when there's investment required, you need to look at how is that investment going to work for me 3 years down the road, and what does my business look like. So always make sure that you ask appropriate questions that are relevant to short-term and long-term. It's the only way it's going to work for you, and make any investment that you make worthwhile in the long run. Nobody likes rebuilding things more than they need to.
Agreed. So some tools and resources for you. This is something that we're going to provide for you at the end. That you're going to be able to download. One is the COVID-19 safety worksheet. We also, here at Bridge, we've developed some signage that you can just print and use for your business. I know that's one, so we can take one less thing away from your plate. And we've also include some other links and stuff that, depending on your industry, that you can go and take a look as to what the protocols are.
So I would love to know of everybody that we have on a call with us today, what industries are you guys representing right now? Are any of you currently open for business? What does your operation look like today? Are there any concerns that you have that you want to talk about? I would just love to get to know a little bit about what you guys are working on.
So everyone, feel free in the chat just to post there if you'd like to speak.
What it is. Yeah.
So I'll speak for Spark because, well, first off, thank you guys for sharing that knowledge. That was fantastic. I really appreciate it to both of you. And I have quite a few questions actually on our end. So
yeah, go ahead.
A lot of information there. That was great. And one question that's kind of a very entry level one is, should masks be encouraged or mandated in indoor spaces? Like, I know there was the debate in different municipalities, and here in Niagara being one of them, but what's your thoughts on that?
So I don't want to speak for Julio. I know from a collective company perspective, our thought process is that you're protecting yourself, but you're also protecting others from something you might not know about yourself. Because as one of the stats that Julio shared, 40% of the transmission occurs from somebody that's not symptomatic. So you could be putting somebody else at risk without even knowing it. And we've seen that happen in our local community. So when in doubt, definitely wear a mask, especially in areas like grocery stores or places that there are, you have to go to those places, and there's vulnerable people in our community that don't have alternate arrangements to avoid going to those places. So there's no harm in it. When it comes to, and this is just my personal opinion of wearing a mask, when you're driving around in your car, not really necessary. You see it a lot, right? Because it makes people feel comfortable. If it's what makes you feel comfortable, by all means, no judgment, do what makes you feel comfortable. But the thing that you have to be very hyper aware of is that the mask needs to be clean. You can't just put on a mask and wear the same mask every day, and you have to actually wash it or clean it or replace it if it's reusable. But when in doubt, yes, wear a mask.
Agreed.
Julio.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. It's something that, like Brandy said, there's no harm in it. Really, when you think about it, it's almost something that it's courtesy to others.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be for your own thing, but it's courtesy to others. Like she said, that may be susceptible to getting COVID-19.
And it's more appropriate in an indoor setting than an outdoor setting. If you are outdoors on a patio at a restaurant and everything's properly spaced away and you're with someone in your circle, not necessary in my opinion, because you are being cognizant of avoiding the 5 C's, you're taking necessary precautions, you're social distancing, and the open air is actually something that acts as a protector, right? So not necessary, unless again, it makes you personally feel comfortable.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then a follow-up question to that is, who is the onus on, like as an employer? Do you have to provide the PPE for people entering your building, or is it basically an individual basis? So talking hand sanitizers to masks, all that.
Because it's not necessarily a hardline legal requirement, everything that we have been provided for information is that the government hasn't mandated onus on expense. But our thought process is that you want people to feel comfortable, and you want to show that you're doing the right thing to protect, like a people first environment, right? If I want you to come in and use my services or eat at my restaurant, I want you to feel comfortable. I want my staff to feel comfortable, and I'm going to provide you what you would need to feel comfortable, just like I would shopping bags at a trade show event, or handouts with information. That's now just part of what we provide our patrons and our staff to be safe. And then of course there's obviously like very stringent public safety requirements that are now going through protocols of, like, you have to have sanitizer, you have to have additional scheduling, you have to have, there's all new limits on facilities cleaning and kitchen cleaning and all that kind of stuff. That all of that has changed completely, so you have to be compliant in those spaces. But costing out some of those extras is, I think that the onus falls on the business owner because it's the right thing to do.
Like a lot of businesses that we've been talking to, they're making strict rules just so they can provide that confidence to their employees and also to their customers. And because they're the ones making those rules, and they want to make sure that they're being followed, they're providing all the PPE and the necessary sanitization equipment and all that stuff.
That's great. Now, my one last question, and anyone, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But many entrepreneurs on the call right now, and we all know, especially you two, you guys have had many different businesses, but you wear many different hats and you're always working. And, to add one more thing, really the need to have to manage all this can become really overwhelming. And you guys touched on that. So what's some advice for entrepreneurs that might be feeling overwhelmed with having to deal with some of these changes?
As Julio mentioned earlier, he didn't really expand on it, but by picking one trusted source of credible information will cut out a lot of the overwhelming feeling. There's a lot of really great, and it depends. It's like that hierarchy, right? So you've got the provincial level of information, which is constantly being updated. But then within our local community, there's a pretty strong cadence of resources that are available as well. So the city of Niagara Falls, I'll use them as an example because we are in the city of Niagara Falls. They provide localized trusted resources that complement and act upon the provincial. So they're tiered properly, right? There are some organizations that are putting out publications, their information resources based on what they offer. What I recommend to anybody that speaks to us is that just take a look at everybody's information and see if they're listing or pulling from the hierarchy of information, to make sure that it's constantly being updated. Are they pulling their information from the province of Ontario to be compliant with whatever they recommend to you? And is it timely? You can do a quick cross check, right? The Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce is a great example that I will lend on. They are to the minute on what they share to the business community of Niagara based on what the province and Canada overall are rolling out. And you can tell that when you look at their website. You can tell that when you look at any of their mailings or publications. They're very, very timely as a business organization and a trusted resource. They're also not publishing anything that is just independent opinion. Everything is based on one of those credible provincial resources. So you know that the source of information is the most reliable based on what we know from a government perspective. The second thing that I like to talk about is if you're going to start making changes, whether you can do them yourself, like I know Dan, for example, representing Spark, he can pretty much build anything. He can customize anything, he can design anything. He's incredible from, a business owner perspective. You yourself might not be able to do that. If you have to go out and build out or modify any physical structures, whoever you choose to work with, pick someone that will take the most amount of work off of your plate. The person that will take the approach to literally make your life easier. So this is why part of our solutions that we provide when we recommend is we give you all the policies and all the implementation and everything. We take you through a questionnaire. We can get you the hardware you need, the software you need, the process you need, and we'll even train your staff to roll it out, as long as it's custom that makes sense for your operation. So we try to do end to end so that you're just making the decisions that make sense for your business, and we're giving you the tools to carry it out so you don't have to figure it all out.
No, that's great. And Brandy, when you said I'm not being handy, you were directing that at me, weren't you?
No, I was not. I would never say anything like that.
That's okay. Sometimes it is definitely
me though. Like I can't build anything like that, But I know that if somebody said, "Hey, I just opened up this floor space. I need to put the offices back," Dan could build walls. You'd come to work the next day and you'd have walls.
Me and you could do it. It would just take us a couple months and might not be straight walls.
Yeah, right.
One last question, and again, anyone, please feel free to post your questions in the chat on my end. But Julio, you are very involved in the tech industry and really what's new technologies coming out. How do you think tech can help this issue just in general? What's some things that you guys are offering?
So one of the things that happened is when we first started with Spark, we were working on the next generation type of technology with VR and augmented reality, virtual reality, and the gesture recognition stuff. It was all something that we were working that, it's going to come out in the future type of thing with 5G, I believe, that we were working on. A lot of that technology that we were developing is now like becoming useful. So for example, we have the ability of using QR codes that we put a QR code on a touch screen, or let's say even like on a poster, and we're able to bring that into an augmented reality type of controls where you can interact with a poster, or you can interact with display type of thing. So there's a lot of new technology that is being pushed forward because of COVID-19. So,
and like another example that I can give is, so there's a chiropractor that we're working with right now that has said, one of the most personalized parts of their practice before was, the physical interaction leading up to their appointment setting, getting to know somebody, and it's a very personal, potentially physically personal relationship that you build with your chiropractor, right? And now their entire waiting room structure has changed. People book their appointments online and they wait in their car so that they're not inside. And a lot of the surveys and the pre-screening questions with their patients are happening by email transactions, not a lot of personalization. And when you finally get your patient into your office, it adds a challenge to that, right? So talking to him about different ways to make that process interactive without having that physical closeness early on, right? And whether there's a couple of different options, whether it's using technology to create almost like a not quite a holographic interview, but a virtual interview that is not just online, but you can come into like a pre-screening room, like a physical room at the chiropractor's office, and you have like virtual screening imagery where you can interact with a receptionist and you can interact with your doctor, share points on your body that can be picked up by the technology and the equipment to build out preliminary data points for the chiropractor so that he's more prepared for when you actually get your first initial visit. Same thing with automating some of the pre-screening methods, whether it's through, you already have your portal where people are booking appointments, adding that pre-screening information into that appointment portal without having your consumers leverage two different systems and making things confusing for people, because it is really overwhelming, especially when you get app overload. Like I experienced app overload from the schools and the kids this year as things winded down. So it's just taking all the technology before that was maybe not readily accessible to people. It's really transformed how to use that in day-to-day operation now. And how does it take away some of the burden with, well, now we have to hire 2 more staff to do screening. Now we have to hire staff to do this. Now we have to hire staff. You use technology to keep your costs down so you don't have to keep adding all of this staff to manage the protocol rollout, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, that was great. So we have one question that's come in. How about common areas like coffee machines and bathrooms? How do we control the number of people at one time in these areas?
So that's a tricky one, and it's very relevant to your physical space and how you can kind of control the traffic pattern. And you take a look at the outdoor mall, for example, and that's probably a really great example. There's some materials for outdoor malls and how they're controlling that kind of traffic. But it's really tricky. You kind of can't in some situations. Take a look at the Niagara outlets, right? You can't possibly restrict traffic in and out of those washrooms unless you create some kind of keypad scan, and it locks after you have a certain number of people that have entered the room. There is technology that can do that. But other than that, it's really just about creating new traffic plans.
And cleaning schedules, right?
And cleaning schedules.
So what a lot of commercial companies are doing is that they're increasing the frequency in which they clean those stations. So with the coffee machines, they've gone into single serve instead of having one, commune type of like a pot, because too many people are handling the pots and stuff. It's that's more chances of spreading the virus, right? So what they're trying to do is eliminate the number of people that interact with a particular unit type of thing. I know in one particular company, they're using, they have one person that deals, if you want coffee, that person is the one that gives it to you. So, once again, reducing the risk and stuff like that. So, and as for bathrooms, it's just a frequency of cleaning. That's all you can do. And a lot of companies also are leaving cleaning products in there. So everybody, after they're done their business type of thing, they go and clean, wipe things out either before or after type of thing. So.
Absolutely.
Like when you go to the gym, or when you don't go to the gym anymore.
Used to.
When you used to go to the gym, you'd literally have to, or be expected as etiquette, to kind of wipe down your surfaces that you came into contact. That expectation is now applied to almost everything.
And you pretty much see it if you go to LCBO or to a number of other commercial places. You see that they have, as you come in, they have like the sanitizers there ready for you with, so you can wipe whatever you're using off and stuff like that. So
from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of discussion and review about Julio. We were talking about this in a R&D call. I can't remember when, recently, about UV screening, right?
Yeah.
And having hyper intense UV screening that essentially does the same thing as sanitizer, right? Now, maybe in the future of grocery shopping, that container that the carts get hosted in is now UV, and they pass through before coming out on the other side being disinfected. So like there's tons of things that are being discussed as far as the evolution of that would go.
Yeah, so that will take I guess that answer will also answer that there's cleaning in an open space. It's just having the products available and getting into that routine that everybody clean before, before you use it and clean after you use it type of thing.
Mm-hmm. You kind of led into a question. I'm by no means an expert or know too much about this, but I have seen there's been a lot of controversy around temperature screening and just the privacy around it. Can you guys add any insight on that? I know you touched on it a bit in the presentation, but like, do you think it's something we should do as entrepreneurs in different businesses?
Well,
I think, again, depending on your environment, it may be applicable. It may be the best solution for you, but it may be not the best solution for you. You have the data privacy thing is a whole other issue. So however you go down that road, you need to make sure that whatever supplier you're working with that provides both the hardware and the software is abiding by all privacy collection laws, that they don't have access to any of the data that is being collected. And there's different products that collect and share data differently, right? We have some products that we have been working with that do like physical alerts so they don't collect the data because they don't want to breach any privacy laws. But a result of not collecting any data is that you have a very public event when somebody does not pass screening. That might not be how you want your environment to be if it's a customer facing kind of environment. For us, all of the data that's collected stays in-house, is destroyed after the immediate process is complete to manage your who's infected and who's not. A lot of it is group screening, so it's just kind of silent in a code that goes to a source of where that you own, and then the data is either yours or destroyed, but nobody else interfaces with that data. But you have to be aware of what's happening if you go down that route. Julio, you know more.
Yeah, so what happens when something like that is being used is, like Brandy said, the data is belongs to, you keep it and you use it the way that you want, type of thing. One thing I do know is that some of the information, is in terms of privacy. Some people were saying, well, do you know my comings and goings and stuff like that? Well, when in a lot of businesses now, having a security camera is the exact same thing. Where's that data stored? It's that data like being, taken in and out, so there are certain privacy concerns that people have, but most places have privacy policies that apply to the video cameras, will also apply to something like thermal screening. So it's almost the same thing.
But it is something that you should be hyper aware of. You need to make sure that whatever you're doing is following the protocols that you need to follow.
So the products that we use, we, like Brandy was saying, is like some of them don't keep any information whatsoever. It's just like an audible or visual alert. Another one does, if you have 30 people, because we have some systems that will scan 30 people a second. So so imagine like in a big place, there's a crowd of people that come into the building. We can scan 30 people a second as they're coming in. How do you know which one was the one that triggered the alarm? Well, this one will actually put a square around the person and it will follow it around. So then the security guard or whoever can discreetly go up to the person and say, hey, you triggered the alarm because of that. And then they will go to the next procedure, like maybe we should double check, make sure that you're not sick or whatever. And then, you're exhibiting certain symptoms. We recommend that you go home and work from home this time until, you're not exhibit those symptoms and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Any final questions? Anyone, please post in the chat. While we're waiting on that, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys for any business that's interested in your services?
Our website, bridge.com, it's BRRIJ.com. We have a contact form on there. We also have an 800 number, then you can ask to speak to any one of us directly. We all have access to that, and yeah, it's in the chat right there. But everybody at Spark always knows how to get a hold of us too.
That's right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you to Brandy Henderson and Julio Batriscaviria from Bridge Solutions on really giving us the knowledge, and I personally feel a lot more comfortable of what needs to be done to safely open our business, and I think a lot of other businesses will find value in this as well. So this webinar has been recorded, so it will be on Spark Niagara's YouTube page. And
oh my goodness.
For anyone else that's interested in some future topics, please check our Eventbrite and our social media. So thank you very much to Brandy and Julio. We really appreciate you guys sharing all the knowledge today.
Our pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
Be
you.
safe, everybody.
Yep.
Bye-bye, guys. Be safe.
Bye.